What are some scary, horrifying, creepy things that have happened to you, or in general, that could have a plausible explanation, but still freak you out? A few years back, I lived with my mother and German Shepherd in a 2-bedroom rented townhome. I got home from work one day and went about my daily routine. When it came time to eat dinner, I knocked on my mom's door to come and eat. I smelled cigarette smoke and heard her grunt a response. So I went back down and ate alone. I figured I would just put a plate away for her. Fast forward to about 2 a.m., I am awoken by someone holding my hand and gently shaking it. I immediately shoot straight up and look around. My dog, who is overly protective and sleeps with me every single night, isn't in bed. She isn't even in the room. She most definitely was on my bed when I went to sleep. I sleep with the bedroom door shut and locked. She is scratching at my closed and locked bedroom door from the hallway. Frantic, I bolt for the door. Let her in and she is searching the whole room. I'm now yelling for my mother. No answer. I force my dog to walk down the hallway with me. I still smell cigarette smoke. I bang on my mom's door. No answer. So I just open it. She isn't even home. The bed is made and her TV is off. My dog and I search the whole entire house. Nothing is out of place. All the doors and windows are still locked. I was freaked out to say the least. The next day I called my mom and she told me she left early the day before to go visit my sick grandfather. I used to have a penchant for wandering around abandoned buildings when I was in high school. One time a friend and I decided it would be a good idea to explore a farmstead that hadn't been in use for years. The whole experience was really bizarre. The farmstead was accessible by a long gravel road that brought you to a cluster of dilapidated buildings around a central barn. We parked at the end of the gravel road near the turn-off to the main road so we could walk around the property and just pull out quickly later. We went into the barn first and there were deer bones arranged in a circle around the skull and a bunch of blankets and wood stacked in a corner of the room. We thought it was really cultish and weird, nope tower, and started walking back to the car. Halfway down the gravel road we heard crunching, heavy footsteps and someone screeching behind us. Blood-curdling screeching. We sprinted back to my car and tried to peel out of there as fast as possible, but it had snowed the night prior and my back tire was stuck in a puddle of melted snow. My friend was screaming because she was so freaked out but wouldn't turn to look at the path behind us. By the time I had gotten the car unstuck, she turned around to see if there was someone following us and there was no one there. I could have been a bird or something, but we both swear up and down to this day that someone was following us. I actually thought I was going to die that day. But also kinda comforting. This story was told to me by my grandmother, who is a no-nonsense kind of broad, so I believe every word of it. My grandma had a neighbor/friend who unfortunately lost her husband when she was young, about 40 or so years ago. It was a sudden death, cardiac arrest or something like that. So this woman was so upset, because for a couple years after his death, she couldn't dream of her husband. For some reason it really bothered her that she couldn't experience a dream with him in it. It's almost like she wanted it for the comfort. Anyway, some time passes, and this woman is preparing to sell her house and move closer to her kids. They lived a state over. Suddenly, she gets her wish. She starts dreaming, and her husband is in them. She has multiple of these dreams, and in every one her husband wakes her up, sits down on the bed, and starts speaking to her. However, his speech horrifies her. It was described to me as backwards or garbled. I imagine it to be something similar to the way Twin Peaks characters speak in the Black Lodge. So yeah, pretty goddamn creepy. She can't make a single word out. A few days before she's about to move out for good, she goes to bed and dreams of him again. The dream is the same, except she understands one word he says. He grabs her in the dream and repeatedly says rafters, almost seeming panicked. She wakes up rattled, but returns to sleep. The next day, as she's finishing up packing in the basement, she looks up and sees the rafters. She remembers the dream, and is compelled to reach into them. She does, and pulls out thousands of dollars worth of World War II bonds her husband had purchased without her knowledge. She swears he never told her about them. So he appeared in her dream to tell her so she wouldn't leave all those bonds behind when she sold the house. Story still gives me chills today. When I was younger, my mom, my grandma and I liked to go to this little frou-frou tea shop that was about 40 miles from our home. It was a cute little place where you could get the classic tea and sandwiches and cute little desserts and all. One time we went, all was normal, but on the way home we received a call that my other grandma had passed away. Very sad, but as she had been battling cancer, not exactly unexpected. The next time we went, a few months later, On the way home we received a call that my uncle had died suddenly of a heart attack. Creepy coincidence for sure, but we still did not think too much of it at the time. We went back a third time a few months after that, and for the third time on the way home, we received the phone call that someone had died. This time it was my grandpa's brother. We never went back to the tea shop again. Now all of these people were elderly and not exactly in the best of health, so them passing away around the same time was not exactly creepy. But the fact that 3 separate times that we went to this place, 3 people died the same day and we received the calls on the way home, makes me think something about that place was cursed. It has since closed, but I'm still nervous to even go to that area to this day. A few years ago I was trying to get hold of my parents for something, can't remember what. Neither of them answered their cell phone, so I called their home phone. The line picked up, and it sounded like someone was talking, but it was very distorted. After about 10 seconds the line disconnected. That was at 9 p.m. My parents called me back around 10:30, they had been out at a movie, which had started at 8:30. They live alone. So, this is going on as we speak, but let's take you back a couple of months to when this all started. One nice warm day, end of August, early September, I go outside and find this little ball of fur/feathers/hair and a dangling earring hooked in on my porch. Weird, I thought. I brought it up to my husband and said that there was some weird juju shit on our porch and it freaked me out. I was not touching it, but it needed to go. He suggested that it was a nice gift from the tomcat next door, or something that our dog dragged home. My dog has never done that before, but hey, a way more logical reason than someone leaving weird juju shit on our porch. Cool. Then last week, this fully intact lower mandible bone of a white-tailed deer shows up on our porch in the exact same place as where the hair/feather/fur ball was placed. Again, I asked my husband about it and he says that the dog must have brought it with him. Again, something that he's never done, but logical. I still wasn't going to touch it. The weird fur/feather/earring ball was still fresh in my mind, and if someone was leaving weird shit on the porch I wasn't going to touch it. Thanks for taking that danger on, Han. It stayed on the porch for a while. Yesterday, I was studying, facing my front door. Around lunchtime, my dog starts freaking out and I look up and there's this older, disheveled-looking lady, I think, on our porch, who I had never seen before, walking toward our front door. She leaves something on the bench we have out there and turns around and walks away. After a beat, I get up to grab whatever pamphlet she left on our porch. Except, she didn't leave a pamphlet. She came onto our porch, took the lower mandible bone and moved it onto the bench. Right in the middle of 2 posts of the porch fence, right in line with a bright ray of sunshine. So, now I am pretty convinced that there is someone leaving weird shit on our porch, and here's hoping we're not cursed. I've posted about this before, but when I was about 9 years old, 1995, in the middle of a bright summer day, I went to the refrigerator to get a popsicle. Suddenly a roughly teenage-looking guy, with long brown hair, like this, wearing a beige turtleneck and red plaid bell-bottoms, like this, but with dark green and black lines, turned around the corner into the hallway to my left, then vanished from toe to head as I looked at him. Told no one about it for years, until after my mother mentioned meeting the, now grown, kids who lived in the house before us, who asked her if she'd seen the bell-bottom ghost. My friend asked me if I would go to her house after work and feed her dog as she would not be home until 3 a.m. or so. She worked in a bar. I arrived at her house at 8:30 p.m. and got the key she had left under the mat to unlock the door. Once I unlocked the door I turned off the alarm and put the key in a white bowl by the door. I am 100% sure I put the key in the bowl. I fed the dog and played with him for a little while, then went to lock up the house again and leave, but the key was gone. Just then the dog started furiously barking and ran full speed out of the kitchen and up the stairs. He just sat there growling at nothing. The feeling that came over me at that time was so strange. I randomly burst out crying and couldn't stop. Eventually I calmed down, put the dog back into the kitchen and looked for the key. It was literally nowhere. I ended up finding another key that worked, so I just locked the house and left. I told my friend and she looked daily for about a week. Then one day, the key was back in the white bowl. I've posted this before, but here it is again. The plausible explanation is sleep paralysis, but I've never experienced anything like it before or after this incident. When I was in elementary school, I shared a queen-size bed with my older sister, and our family dog, a mutt that looked like a short-haired lassie, would sleep at the foot of our bed every night. When I was about 6 years old, I woke up one night around midnight and saw a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. The figure was entirely in black without any eyes or a face. I tried to wake my sister up, but she rolled over to go back to sleep. My sister must have accidentally kicked the dog, because the dog woke up and raised her head and started growling at the figure at the foot of the bed. The growling then woke my sister up and she saw the figure and started screaming. When my parents came into the room and turned the light on, nothing was there. To this day, both my sister and I are adamant that we saw a ghost or other demon in our room. We know we aren't crazy because the dog saw it too. So as a youngster, me and my brother were staying up late playing video games since we didn't have school the next morning. It was maybe 3 a.m. when we decided to shut it down and get in bed. My room is at the end of the hall while my brother's was right next to mine. After we shut it off and put the controllers away, we both hear these heavy slow footsteps coming from the kitchen. The kitchen was the only room without carpet, so they sounded pretty ominous. We gave each other a look and I called out down the hall, "Dad?" Well, then the footsteps sounds trailed back towards our laundry room and stopped. That's also where our basement door is. Well, we knew something wasn't right, so we both start yelling for our mom and dad and they come rushing to us all sleepy and confused. And we frantically explain what we heard. My dad goes and checks it out and tells us that all the doors are still locked and closed and there wasn't anything showing anyone was in the house. Plausible explanation could be that it was just a murderer that broke in and scurried off when we called out, but I always wondered what if it was a murder ghost instead. Edit, woo. Thanks for my first award on Reddit. I can feel my ego swelling already. My dad told me the story of when he was just out of college and visited friends in California. This was just prior to the Night Stalker killings in the 80s. My mom stayed home because she was not feeling well, actually was pregnant with me. My dad was sleeping on his friend's couch and heard someone walking around. He called out his friend's name, then his roommates, and the walking stopped. He heard a window close after that and then nothing. It's very possible someone had climbed in the back window, was in the house, and my 6 feet 4 inches 240 pounds college football player of a dad scared him off by calling out. It's kind of a family dark joke that my dad scared Richard Ramirez away, but my mom hates thinking about it because the dates and location works out that it very well could have been him in his early years trying it out before he started killing. Me and my family woke up in the night to the sound of manic laughing. Like evil manic laughing. All of us heard it. It was coming from the attic. My dad, being not superstitious or scared of anything, was white as a sheet. He pulled the attic ladder down and went up to find an old Dairy Lee cow alarm clock that had faulty sound randomly going off. Don't believe any supernatural activity made it go off, just hearing a manic evil laugh in the middle of the night from the attic made us shit ourselves. Context: my grandfather was a truck driver and taught me everything I know about driving, especially in snow. I used to work at a drugstore and one night, I was closing another store in our chain and we had a snow squall that unexpectedly dropped a few inches of snow in our area. I wasn't very familiar with the area, and I had my mom's car, so I wasn't used to the car either. The snow was still coming down and I couldn't see, so I was creeping home and panicking as I saw cars spinning out all around me. All of a sudden, I saw a light in my passenger side view mirror, and I turned my head, and sitting in the passenger seat, plain as day, I saw my dead grandfather. I heard him say he knew that I wasn't freaked out by a little snow, and then I heard his voice rattling off all the things he taught me about driving in the snow. I looked back towards the road, and then he was gone. It was a calming experience. When I saw him it was more "Okay, Pop's here, I'm okay," instead of "OMG, you're supposed to be dead, WTF, and I stopped panicking and got home without a problem. It was most likely just my brain/eyes/whatever playing tricks on me to get me to stop panicking, but to this day it still freaks me out. My grandfather died when I was in a very uncertain place in life. He didn't get to see me graduate college, because I flunked out and worked garbage jobs for 2 to 3 years before getting my act together. He ended up getting mesothelioma and went from a fit and healthy old man to a skeleton clutching at his chest and gasping for air within the span of a month. I got to say my goodbyes before he was really far gone. Was afraid of hospitals, but I did go in and see him while he was still lucid, and I think he preferred I see him like that when I said my goodbyes rather than the way my mom described him on his last few nights. We had that kind of mutual respect for each other, and sense of privacy. That man always thought I was smart, even when I was failing school and making terrible choices. I was always his granddaughter and treated the same way with encouragement, F's on my report card or not. My grandparents' house was like my sanctuary when I was little. My mom had a lot of issues and I lived through 2 divorces and countless out-of-state moves, but I could always count on my time spent with my grandparents to be peaceful. Until my grandmother's pain issues got really bad and she found, not so great, ways to cope with it. He also technically wasn't my biological grandpa, since my mom was adopted. It did not matter. I'd go to their house and eat home-cooked meals and play skip-bo with him till like 10 p.m. when it was finally bedtime. So the point of that massive wall of text, I loved my grandfather, he was a rock for me. When he passed I was upset, but he was in so much pain at the end I was also relieved for him. He was taken too soon, but life is a bitch and super unfair, so at least in that unfair end he didn't suffer as long as some people do. After he passed I started having dreams about him and their house. My grandmother had long passed by this point too. In them, we'd sit in the living room or at the kitchen table and he would just talk to me about things in my life. I very distinctly remember a dream where he warned me to get away from the abusive boyfriend I was seeing at the time. As time went on I got my act together and now I live a relatively comfortable life. I'm not rich or super successful by any means, but given the life I had, I beat some odds, let's put it that way. There was a reason I failed out of middle school and all kinds of other things. And as these years have gone by, I've had less and less dreams about him. Now I don't dream about him at all anymore. To date, my brother has had one dream about him when he was about to graduate college. And I'm so proud, dream. It actually took me a long time to realize I don't dream about him anymore. I still dream about their house all the time, but it's always empty. I had one single dream about my grandmother, and it was her in her kitchen making dinner with her back to me, which is a pleasant memory of how she was in life. I think the one dream from my grandmother was her saying goodbye, but all those dreams about my grandfather were him essentially watching over me. And as I got my life together, he realized he didn't need to anymore, so he either moved on or moved elsewhere. And that's why when I dream about their house, it's still because I remember it as a safe haven. But now it's empty, because they're gone and have moved on. Which makes me happy and so terribly sad at the same time. But, at the same time, if my grandpa was confident enough in me now to trust I'd be okay, I must be doing something right. So I do firmly believe that loved ones can and do watch over people if they feel they're needed and there was a strong bond while they were alive. Your rationalization makes complete sense, too. But it might be okay to let yourself think you were protected by something unexplainable in that instant, especially if it comforts you in some way.